Hey, welcome to the Weekly Howl, and my name is Eddie from Eddie and the Wolves, and this is Phil Connellan from Blackwater Conspiracy. And today we are joined by Gregory Cuckery, master of the gristle.
Woo!
Mr. Greg Koch, how you doing?
I'm doing well, fellas. How you doing?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Excellent. Now it's later on Sunday there for you. It's around dinner time, correct?
Yeah,
Yes, that's right, yeah.
yeah,
Almost time to have a beer.
yeah.
Oh, don't let me stop you.
So where are you at the moment then, Greg?
I'm at my house in beautiful Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, which is in the Milwaukee Metroplex. I don't even know if they use the word Metroplex, but it's if I threw a stone, I would hit the city of Milwaukee. I'd have to throw it a little hard, but it could be done.
Yeah.
So
you've got long arms, haven't you? I'm sure you
there you go. There it is.
Yeah, I've been to Milwaukee once or twice. It's a pretty nice area.
Yeah, it's festive. It's a good place. It's right smack dab in the middle of the old US of A. So when I need to go anywhere, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, they have a big music festival over there in the summer. Is it Summerfest it's called?
That is correct. You are exactly correct. Yep.
Yeah. Been through there a couple of times.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, pretty big.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old Summerfest is for reals. It's
Yeah.
good times.
Yeah, they get the best of that festival.
So, Greg, for those listeners who might not have heard of you before,
Get your head out of your asses. What do I gotta do?
I mean, anyone who's not visited YouTube and typed in guitar will, not know who you are. So maybe just give us a bit of your background.
Well, years and years ago, my whole plan of attack was to always have my own band. So I started playing guitar around, grade school, middle school. That's, when puberty strikes, the desire to rock is nigh. So I took to it right away. I knew it's what I wanted to do from the get-go. I went to school for music, really majored in beer, if we're honest, but went to a college to study quote unquote jazz guitar, though I never really wanted to be a jazz. The kind of embryo of what I was to be was kind of already in place when I was in high school, kind of this blues, jazz, rock, country, funk, wise ass hybrid. Was always to the fore, and I always was interested in kind of carving my own niche as far as, I was really into Hendrix and Clapton, but kind of got to the roots of who they were influenced by and segued out to all these different, jazz players, country players, whatever the case may be. And when I got out of school, I started my own band and just, I've always been releasing my own music, but, it's pretty difficult when you're not easily marketable in any variety of ways. Was it a blues band? Yes, but all the blues, that's not blues. Was it a rock band? That's blues. That's that blues shit. Or if I would play jazz, that's not jazz. And then if I played something, you know what I mean? It was one of these things where we were not easily categorized. And as a result, it was very difficult to kind of get any kind of national momentum going, although I tried my best until one day I got a guy from Fender Guitarists came into a club where I was playing in Milwaukee and was like, hey, you should do clinics. We should write you up and get you to do clinics and, help your career along. I said, well, that'd be fucking great. And so that's kind of how I got known. And what was kind of funny is the whole reason why kind of my guitarness was more recognized than, the music, which I still stand behind and still produce in gratuitous quantity, is just the fact that I could do all these styles and nod to all these different things was really handy when it came to everything from doing a product demo or demoing a guitar or writing instructional material, putting on an entertaining clinic, all that kind of shit. So, as well as doing sessions or whatnot. So that's kind of how things went along for me. And I was kind of like Fender's main, in their words, not mine, I was their brand ambassador for probably a good 15 years. But it really wasn't until I started doing these guitar demos for Wildwood Guitars And prior to that, I mean, I had record deals like Steve Vai's record. You know, I was on his label when it first came out, when it was actually making kind of a splash, and had, deals with European labels, always had good press coverage in guitar magazines and so on and so forth. But I got to say, everything kind of pales in comparison to when I started doing these videos for Wildwood Guitars in Colorado.
That's where I first found you, was Wildwood.
Yeah, that's I hear that quite a bit. I mean, it was one of those things where it was the perfect kind of application for me, just sitting in a chair, playing whatever came to mind and kind of saying whatever came to mind. And because I always, I've always just loved getting the most out of a guitar and kind of playing to the guitar, meaning, because I'd done all this misspent youth of learning all of these little nuanced things over the years, it really came in handy when it was like, okay, here's a Les Paul. Well, what do you do on a Les Paul? Well, you do this, what do you do on a, L5? Well, you do this. What do you do on a Strat? What do you do on a Tele? So I had a bag of my own, tricks, if you will, for lack of a better term. And so, and I did thousands and thousands and thousands of videos. I would go out there. Initially, I went out there for a couple days, and then shortly within a few months, I was going out there 6 days a week, and I would do between 25 and 30 videos a day.
Wow.
And then it went down to 4 days a week, 4 days a month. So over the years, I mean, there's literally been thousands of videos with these guitars, and
quite a heavy workload that is to keep.
It is. It is, a lot of people, like when I would visit my buddies from Andertons, and they're like, well, how many videos do you do a day? I'm like, well, we do 25 and 30 videos a day. And they're like, well, we do like 3. Of course, theirs are a lot more, I mean, literally it's just me in a chair, cameras on, there's a couple of different views, and then we're donezo. So, but it's worked out well. And the thing that's very gratifying about all of that stuff is that, a lot of, and this is not denigrating what everybody else does. I'm just glad that I'm in the situation that we're in, was the fact that, it doesn't really matter if it gets 500 views, 10,000 views, 500 views, if the guitar sells, our job is done. Yeah. So what's cool about it, and Steve, the owner of Wildwood, has never wanted to monetize any of the videos. He's like, look, we make money from selling the guitars. If people enjoy watching the videos for just the content of what's in there, that's fine by me. But he's never monetized the videos. So it's kind of a refreshing thing in the fact that none of it's clickbaity, or, you know what I mean? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
yeah, there's totally no bullshit involved in there, is it? It's
correct.
Just you and a guitar. And usually you just give the specs, don't you? And then you're like, and this is how you rock this thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think people are drawn to that, especially, me being at the time, a 20-year-old guitar player, discovering, your YouTube channel. And they order a lot of their own custom guitars in, don't they? Their own specs and things like that.
Correct. Yes, think, absolutely.
Every time you see one, you're like, fuck, I want that guitar. I want that guitar. Yeah. So,
now I'm in trouble because they're sending them to my house. and I got to send them back. Right now I've got a gold Wildwood 1061 Strat and a pink sparkle telly, and then there's a blue sparkle custom telly. Oh, it's ridiculous. So fortunately what happens is I do a live stream, and then I do some extra video stuff with it, and a lot of the times it sells while they're still here. So then they're like, please
you have to send them to the customer.
Exactly. Please send them back immediately. Okay.
So right now you're in your orange room where you do your live streams with
That's correct.
You do it with your son Dylan, don't you?
That's right. Yep.
It's the Koch Marshall trio, that's right.
Yes. And now we're doing stuff with there's a bass player in town, because Toby, the organ player, Toby Marshall, he lives up in Minneapolis. That's 5 hours away, and it's hard for him to get down here with frequency, just because I've got to make sure I pile enough stuff together that it's worthwhile for him to do it, So we were doing it like every month when the pandemic was in full swing, and people were really generous with the tips. And now they're still generous, but it's just not quite the same. So I got to be careful when I bring them down. But, as part of the Fishman streams, my son moved in with this bass player buddy of ours. They got a cool house, as a matter of fact. And so he's out of the house finally, bless him, for both of us. It's great to have him around, but at some point you got to spread your wings and fly. So We've been doing stuff every Friday with the bass player, Matt Turner, who I call Turner the Burner. So that's kind of fun too, because, I played in power trios with a bass player for, 99% of my professional career. So there's things that I do in that format that's different from what I do in the organ format, so that's kind of fun too.
Greg, you've got a couple of kids, haven't you? You've got 4 kids.
I do, yes.
Do the other 3 get jealous about the fact that you spend so much time with Dylan?
No. I mean, they've all had their moments. You know what I mean? So my youngest is a senior in high school now, so he's just about to go to college, and he plays. Let me turn this thing off here so we don't hear that obnoxious jangling of my mail program. He plays saxophone, but what's interesting is that they're all creative minded. My oldest daughter, she went to school for theater in poli sci, and so she's out at a finishing school out in California right now. That's more of kind of it's an acting school. So, and she plays, she would play bass a little bit, and she really took to it fast. I'm like, you know what? Just keep playing. You never know when that'll come in handy.
Yeah,
and they're like, yeah. And then my other daughter initially went to school for theater as well. But then she switched she's still kind of in the process of switching, but she would play guitar, and she's got a great singing voice. My other daughter has a great singing voice too, but Isla's really got a nice, she's got a high range, and she would pick up guitar so fast. I'm like, if you just practiced a little bit, you might find that this is one way just to have fun. But I mean, you could go into a coffee shop, just you and a guitar, and destroy. But
100%, yeah.
But they don't, they don't want to do it. So it's an interesting thing. They like what I do, but they just didn't have the bug like Dylan had it. Dylan knew from the get-go that he was going to be a pagan rock warlord, and there you go.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, back at the time when you were with Favored Nations with Steve Vai,
yes,
he had cited a few other guitar players. Doug Doppler being one that I'd spent a little bit of time with.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys that were on the same label? Did you ever get together? There was a thing back then. Steve Vai had got there was 4 or 5 guys, and they went out on the road. Did you ever go out with him on that kind of?
No, as a matter of fact, that was one of the frustrating things. I mean, Steve was always cool and nice, but Steve's had his own career, so he had other people kind of running the label, right? And Steve would make the decisions here and there. But one of the things that was really frustrating is that, to your point, I had a lot of friends that were on the label, and I was doing all kinds of different things over the years with different people. Like occasionally I'd do this thing in Italy where it'd be me and Greg Bissonette on drums and Stu Ham on bass. And then both of which had records out on Favored Nations. And then I was buddies with Andy Timmons, I was buddies with Johnny A, whole bunch of different people. And so I would say, hey, maybe, because, everyone's like, oh, instrumental music can never get booked. We're like, well, it's a small audience, but it's a faithful audience that'll come out if you package it accordingly. So I thought it would be really cool to have an idea where we would do a package tour, because everyone would have merch to sell. That is, there, and there was just no interest. There was just no interest to make that happen. There was, it was a little frustrating. You kind of got the thought of, not to be more Machiavellian about it, but I had put out my own records for years prior to that point. I always knew I'd put them out. I'd sell a few thousand copies. Back then we'd sell more than a few thousand copies, because that's when people actually, bought CDs. But, the point is I made money. I was able to record my records and make money every time and have money to record the next record. Yeah. And all of a sudden I get this record deal, and then you're making no money. And so it was one of those things where it's like, well, it's this, it's just this idea to build up a catalog so that you have enough guys like me who are going to sell an X amount. And then you just don't have to do anything. So, I mean, I don't think that was, the actual modus operandi, but that's kind of what happened.
Well, where did the Mascot label group come along in your career? Because they are kind of more song oriented with blues.
Right.
So, well, that's where they are right now in their evolution. So at which point did you fit into that?
Well, it was weird because it was about 6 months after I had the Favored Nations deal. I put the Favored Nations record out. There's a little frustrating. It was the first record was a compilation because, as I said, I had like 7, I don't know how many records out at that point, but a lot of them, all of which were new to everybody else because they were, and then I added like 5 extra new tracks. So there was like this sampling of, and the reason why I went instrumental with Vi's label is because I thought, well, I mean, even though I had a ton of, all of my records were mostly vocal oriented things prior to that point. My drummer always had a great voice and I would sing some stuff. We'd have 3-part harmony, yada, yada, yada. And I wrote a bunch of songs. So I got to deal with Favored Nations. And I thought, well, it makes sense if I want to be, to kind of narrow the lane a little bit, maybe we'll just keep it instrumental, right? I think I sang like 2 songs maybe on the record, maybe 1. And, so when Ed came along from Mascot, he was at the NAMM show and he came up to me. He's like, hey, I'm interested in doing your more blues oriented vocal stuff. I'm like, no shit. So we decided that first record would be a compilation record. That was actually a double disc. It was one disc was all vocal stuff. And then the other disc was instrumental stuff that wasn't on the Favored Nations record.
Right. Okay. Cool.
And that was I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go on, no, finish your thought.
I was just going to say, and that came out, and then and the coolest thing about that relationship was that he set you up with an agent and got you playing.
Yes.
So that is maintained since that first record over in Europe. I met my agent over there, and I've been going over there. Prior to COVID, we'd go over there at least once or twice a year doing stuff. Yeah. So, and then I did another record for them called 4 Days in the South, which I really liked. And a lot of people who like what I do like that record. But again, it's an interesting thing. The kind of blues rock I like to do, it's the kind of stuff I've always done, which is, there's a bit of funk, there's a bit of blues. But I mean, the blues is legit. I mean, it's not like I've studied and done 1,000 blues gigs. You know what I mean? So when it comes to doing the real McCoy, not like saying, well, I'm really into Gary Moore. That's not my thing. You know what I mean?
Can I just jump in and say it is absolutely legit because I last year bought the Brave New Blues, your book.
Oh yeah.
And was learning, all the licks and tricks from that. And yeah, you really know your blues.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Yeah. So, but what's weird is that because people's like, why don't you just do a straight blues record? And it's like, it's not that I can't, it's just that I won't.
Yeah.
And that's always been my problem. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't think it's a problem. Everything, you're meant to do what you're meant to do. So
yeah, that's it.
That record,
at some point you turn into old Clapton, don't you? Just churning out 12 bars.
Right.
Yeah.
And though I love just playing a 12-part blues, and that's not to say that I might not do something like that at some point. But just at all these different places where it seemed like the logical thing to do, I'm like, yeah, fuck that. I'm not going to do it.
Did you have to have an awkward conversation with Mr. Vi then about parting ways, or how did that work?
No, I asked him, I said, hey, do you mind if I do this thing? Yada, yada, yada. And he's like, yeah, no problem. Mm-hmm. So that was that. It was, I was just such a neophyte when it came, and I didn't have management, it was me. And to in the final analysis, it's worked out, because I had to learn all those lessons on my own and figure out and really do everything for myself. I do have a guy now that helps me with a bunch of stuff, but the vast majority of stuff over the years, I just had to learn the hard way and just try not to make boneheaded decisions. And
that is pretty much what this podcast is about, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely.
So the thing is with record deals is that, you kind of think that, okay, now I've made it, I've made it to the fact that, now I'm going to get an agent. Now I'm going to get, decent coverage in press things. Maybe I'll get on some tours. Maybe I'll get on some tours with some of the people that are on the label, And then you just realize that, no, it's actually harder to get an agent than it is to get a record deal. And,
I've always said, Ed, that the most important link is the agent.
Right. And they always say stuff to you like, well, are you getting airplay in this, how much airplay you're getting? Well, it's always like the carpet, it's like, how much airplay? Well, I don't get any airplay here unless, you can't get airplay there unless you have gigs. I'm like, well, how do I get a gig there? We got to have airplay. I'm like, you guys are fuckers.
It's really funny. I mean, Phil's just bullied his agent into getting me a tour of the UK, right?
Yes.
And he said, oh, I don't know, because you're not in any magazines. I said, oh, we're in this magazine. He said, yeah, but that's not really a magazine, but it's...
It's hard.
The Mascot label, even today, they're one of the labels that actually, as you say, they designate an agent to their artist.
Right.
So that always helps. You know, there's been several artists over here, blues, guitar guys, that have signed a Mascot and they've got an agent straight away and they've been out touring, and that's just gradually raised their profile step by step. And that's, for me, Mascot are one of those labels that actually actively do, not like the major labels where you're kind of dependent on your management negotiating with an agent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So, a smallish label like Mascot is for guitar oriented people is the way to go if you can do a deal with them. But
although what was a little frustrating. So I had 2 records out on Mascot. I had initially. So I had I think it was 13 by 12 was the double record of the half instrumental, half vocal stuff. And I put out this record, 4 Days in the South, and they just didn't promote the record at all. And so that was a little frustrating. And then shortly around that period of time, I started doing gigs with Malford Milligan singing and Roscoe Beck on bass, and I had Tommy Breckline on drums. It was kind of an all-star cast.
Yeah.
And we had a record done, because what we were doing is that as we were sussing out possibly making a band out of this thing, I would bring the guys in and I would make sure I had enough gigs to make it worth everyone's while, which thank God it was. So I'd have a couple festival gigs. I'd put a couple club gigs around it. And then I had a couple different radio stations that we do stuff on. And one of the radio stations was this local station, WMSC, which college station. And you'd go in there and you'd play in this room where they store all their records, full band stuff, full roaring volume. And at the end of the show, this guy, Billy Cicerelli, comes in, who engineers, and he's like, he'd hand you a CD. I'm like, well, what's this? Oh, this was your performance today. I'm like, no shit. So, and on the way back from the gig, we pop it in the CD player, when cars had CD player. And and we'd listen. I was like, we could release this shit. So after about 5 times of these guys coming into town, we piled up a really good collection of tunes. So I approached Ed from Mascot and I said, hey, Ed, I've got this band with Roscoe Beck, yada, 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 Malford Milligan singing, and we got this record done. It's already paid. It's done. It's paid for. What do you think we should put this, why don't we put this out? He's like, well, your last record really didn't do all that well. I'm like, yeah,
you didn't do anything.
You didn't do anything. And plus this is like an all-star cast and it's already done and paid for.
It's a win-win.
Make me an offer I can't understand, and let's let's get this thing going. So he had no desire to do it, and I said, well, then do you mind if I find somebody else to release it? So then we started doing stuff with this ZYX Pepper Cake label, German label that was, I think it was part of BMG, whatever. They at least would put out the records and do a modicum of promotion and make us posters and do whatever and make sure it was everywhere it was supposed to be theoretically. And so I put out another 3 records with them. Was it 3 or 4? Christ, I can't even remember. I think it was 3. And then I started doing records out on my own again, and I started making money again, which was beautiful. Yeah. But when I had this lineup with my son and with the organ player, I knew that there was something magical about that lineup, and I thought, well, it deserves, maybe because my agent in Europe has always been great, but it's kind of like we played the same places every time. You know what I mean? And I thought, we never had an agent in the UK at that point in time. And finding an agent in the States was still just, as I like to say, a Mongolian clusterfuck. It just was impossible to make happen. Sorry, can we say that in this day and age? Sorry, I left it. You could
we'll beep it out. Do you want to maybe say a different word?
Yes. Well, let's just say it was a cluster blank.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I don't think it was fuck that was the wrong word in that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so I sent it to Ed. Thought, well, what do I got to lose? So I sent it, and he got back to me. I love this stuff. You know, we got this new sub label of Mascot called the Players Club, where it's going to be more kind of instrumental oriented. This would be perfect. What kind of an advance are you looking for? I'm like, do people even give advances anymore? Right. So I was all excited. We worked out a deal. It was a great deal. Got everything ready to rock. And, you know, the main reason why I reached out to Ed, to be honest with you, was I wanted to step things up, but I also logistically, with having an organ player in the band, I needed help making sure we got a B3 at the end of the rainbow everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I thought he would help with that. I thought he would help with getting an agent in the UK. I thought maybe he'd help with getting some other agents in Europe that could help Klaus out, put together some things. And literally none of those things happened, except for the fact that I managed to make sure that we got organs. I managed to get a buddy to book us in the UK, which turned out great, and all that other kind of stuff. So they really didn't do anything. And then, you know, he kind of held the carrot and well, you guys would be awesome at the North Sea Jazz Festival at Montreux. I'm like, yeah, that would be great. Yeah. You know, but literally none of those things happened. So then, you know, the pandemic happens. I've already got another record kind of in the can. So I sent the stuff to Ed and to the A&R guy in the States that they had, who was a fan, who would always come and see me at NAMM when I was playing. And they're like, this stuff is great. We got to figure out a way to market this. I'm like, great. So they're like, and then I'm like, well, why don't we put out an EP? Because I had some vocal tunes that were kind of pandemic oriented that I knew would be kitschy and would sell to the people that dug what I do, you know? And they're like, well, let's hear the whole record first. I'm like, well, then I got to finish the whole record. So then I finished the whole record, and it really turned out cool. I sent it to the A&R guy in the States, who's like, this is fantastic. Some really great music here. Let's figure out a way to market this thing. And then I got an email from Ed going, you know, the market has changed. I'm like, what does pandemic mean? The market has changed? But anyway, so like, we're not interested in this time. So I'm like, I'm glad I spent money on lawyers going over this contract with you know, it was all for naught. So then I just put the record out myself. And of course, within a month, before the record was even in my hand, I'd already made my money. Yeah, because we did pre-sales of X amount of signed copies and so on and so forth. And so we put that record on. Now we've got another one in the can. And this one we're trying to figure out the best way to unleash it. We're starting to do a few more gigs, and you know, we got some stuff next week that we're doing down in Chicago and Ohio and down in Illinois. So we're going to do that. But you know, it's weird. But we do have an agent in the States now. We got an agent in the UK. You know, we still have my buddy Klaus in Europe. We got a buddy of mine, Ricardo, in Italy. So we have people that can book us. Yeah, you've got a network set up. Yes. And cool. And in this day and age, you know, it's like I always kind of make the joke with that helps me manage. He does my website and all that kind of stuff. He's like, in this day and age, you just got to be grateful that you can even keep, not me personally, but anybody, that you can just do what you've always done. Yeah. You know what I mean? For sure. Well, so you touched on college radio in the States. Back in the 90s and in the early 20s, it was a big deal for bands in Europe to get college, you know, to get college press and stuff, and you know, the radio stations over there. So is it still as key as it used to be? Yeah, I have a horrible about you know, a couple different times I had some records, and this guy's like, you should really pay for an independent radio promoter who will get you airplay on these stations and so on and so forth. And I've just never done it because I've always just been so cynical about it. And but I think it does exist to a certain extent. I think college radio was more band orientated, as in a lot of more vocal as opposed to instrumental type stuff as well. Right. Yeah, but it was always, for me back in the day, it was always, you know, get on college radio in America, and it's a good entry point if you can get it. It's a good entry point if you can get it, you know? Exactly. Whereas over in the UK, you know, you've got Planet Rock, and you do have other, you know, guitar orientated music shows and stuff, but it's a lot more to do with the press over here, you know, magazines, a Blues Player magazine, Guitar magazine, Classic Rock magazine. There's a lot more traction to begin that way. Right. You know, but as you say, the whole industry has changed. You know, it's a lot, like for instance, yourself, where YouTube videos and
the internet is where a lot of it is now these days.
Right.
Yeah. And in a way, it's probably a good thing because it puts all those guys out of business, even record labels.
Exactly.
Does that mean that 90% of your audience are musicians, basically, when they come, because they're watching you for a reason, aren't they? They want to buy a guitar or.
Yeah, I think a lot of it are, without a doubt. But the thing about what we do and what we've, with all my different bands have done is that, because I've played in clubs for years, is that I know how to entertain. You know what I mean? So if other people come along that aren't musicians, they like it too. You know what I mean?
So you're not just stood there being like, this is a lesson for all of you out there.
No, it's there's a bit of fun going on, hopefully. And prior to COVID hitting, we were finally, just going out and touring, getting in the van. It was amazing how much stuff we fit in that van. As a matter of fact, when you got a chopped B3, a Leslie, my amps, small drum kit, merch, 3 people in all of our clothes and whatnot into a Honda Odyssey. I mean, it was amazing, right?
Yeah.
But to your point about we could show up and play at a club where maybe you didn't get that much of a guarantee. You got X amount versus the door. But we realized that all I had to do, and obviously the club had to do at least a modicum of promotion. But if I did posts on Instagram and on Facebook and whatnot, and talked about it in my YouTube live streams and whatnot, and just kind of had a daily diary of what I was doing on the road, people would show up, and there would always be stuff like, I had no idea you were in town. I'm coming out tonight, And so we realized that enough people were coming in that we would make money at the door. But even more so, it's like, if I manned the merch table, which is what I would do, they bought everything. We'd make more at the merch table than we would at the door,
People want to come and speak to you, don't they? They want to chat to you and
absolutely. And they're all cool, and that's one of the things too, that I'm really quite grateful for, is the fact that the people that come out and that watch the videos and stuff, it's they think they know me, but in a friendly, not weird way. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, what's going on? And we just start joking from the get-go. It's not like this weird, because I always make the analogy or actually just the comparison to one year I had to do a signing. I was at this place in Canada, Cosmo Music, I think it was. Anyway, and so they were pairing up different people. It was like a mini NAMM show, and they were pairing you up with different people to sit down and sign stuff. And I got paired up with Eddie Kramer, of all people, right? So Eddie and I are kind of shooting the breeze, and we got to sit down. He's like, "Oh, I got to go. I got to sit down here and do this thing." I go, "Yeah, so do I." They put us together. He's, "Oh, okay." So we sit down, and people would come up to Eddie, and they had all these Hendrix records, and they had Zeppelin records and whatnot. And they're like, "Eddie, don't sign it there. No, sign it right here." And they were like so weird and just so kind of psycho. And then as soon as they were done with Eddie, they would go to me and like, "Hey, Greg, how's it going?" And they were like totally normal, totally normal and fun and just like normal people. And so I was always grateful that, if the people that dug what I did, there wasn't
I think that comes back to, the no bullshit thing. What you see is what you get with you, isn't it? It's not like, you're not trying to present a facade like, "Oh, look at me.
Right.
Welcome to Michelangelo Batio's gonna give you the keys to the Ferrari." And it's not like that at all, is it? It's just like, let's play some rock and roll and enjoy ourselves.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it, by God.
Greg, can we chat about your signature equipment?
But of course. Of course we can.
We can see some guitars floating around you.
Yes. Well, the first iteration, if you will, was a red version of the beast right here.
Is that the original?
Well, the original one I had was Blucifer, which is around here somewhere. Kind of the
Lucifer.
Yeah, it was kind of. I always liked the kind of the faded sonic blue. That's transparent, and then the more that it ages, it kind of turns green.
Yeah. That's I've got exactly the same thing down here.
I love it. So that was the first one we did. So when we're going to release them, we did 3 colors originally, which are all still available, but it was the Blucifer color, which is that color I just described. And then this, which was kind of a Fiesta red, but we called it Wow Red. And then there was a powder yellow. And then since then, Wildwood did a run of Clockwork Orange. I thought that was funny. And then there was an Axis Purple. And then this 3-tone Sunburst over here, which is pretty cool. Because I kind of wanted the, the Tele-Custom type of vibe.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
And then our friends at Peach Guitars did a butterscotch version.
I was looking on the website the other day, on Reverend's website, and the black one with the P90s.
Yeah.
And the trem that spoke to me in dirty ways. Honestly, that was.
I'll show you those next. I don't have a black one here yet. That's the one I don't. I have every other color here, but I haven't because the supply chain stuff has been so weird that literally everything Reverend gets is pre-sold and gone, which is
out the door.
Has been great, but
and they're really reasonably priced as well for what they are. They've got a lot of meat under the hood, haven't they?
Well, the one thing that was, I don't say it was weird, but it was, just the other day, an old Fender buddy of mine who was a regional sales rep, and then he went on to be one of the hires up, and now he doesn't work there anymore. But he said, "Boy, could you come up with a more original design?" And I was like, "Listen, asswipe." I didn't say that, but the whole deal is that I had done stuff, as we mentioned, for Fender for 15 years, right? And then the company got sold to different people. And when it got sold to the next cabal of folk, it was right at a time where they were going to finally make me some kind of a deal. Because prior to that, it was always, I was a gig worker. You know what I mean?
Freelance for 15 years.
A freelancer, and I would have to do deals with all these separate entities of Fender. I'd have the Fender USA guys that I would do stuff for. I had separate relations with the UK guys, Germany, Italy, all that kind of stuff. And so I would, every year at NAMM, it's like I'd put my calendar together, and I'd have to basically work out the different times of the year where I was going to be different places, and then book gigs around it and all other kind of stuff. So it was a little stressful. And then after a period of time where my kids were getting older, and my oldest was getting, Dylan was getting near to college age, I said to one of the Fender bigwigs, at breakfast one day at the NAMM show, I'm like, "Hey, I never really asked you guys for any kind of a retainer or guarantee or anything, but he goes, I'm surprised you haven't." I'm like, "Well, I'm asking now because the kids are getting older, and it just would be nice not to have to worry about this shit." He's like, "Absolutely," and I'm like, "Okay." So I thought it was a done deal. Anyways, it was never a done deal. It went on and on and on and on and on. And in the meantime, still doing a ton of stuff for them, going all over the place. Then they sell the company. So, and as a matter of fact, it's like they actually booked a meeting. I was down in Nashville visiting some friends. They said, Thursday at 4:00, we're going to have a meeting. We got 3 different plans that we're going to go over with you, to discuss and yada, yada. So then at like 3:30 that day before 4:00, this buddy of mine from the inside calls me up and says, "The company's being sold. We have no idea what's going to happen. We have no idea who's going to keep their jobs here. So I just want you to know that at 4:00, they're going to tell you they can't do anything." I'm like, "Great."
So sure enough, 4:00, you are fucked.
Right. Yeah. 4:00. And so I'm like, "Okay, whatever." Well, I'm like, in a way, it didn't really matter because I was going to do what I was going to do. You know what I mean? It's like, So I was like, okay. And then I started doing the stuff for Wildwood. And that's the thing that got me more than anything. It's that, here Wildwood, this, it's a huge independent dealer in terms of the amount of business it does. It's incredible. But it's a guy that owns the shop in Louisville, Colorado. He's got, 15 employees, and they made me a guarantee that was bigger than Fender ever made me. And it's been 10 years plus running, right? So that always made me scratch my head. You know what I mean? It's like, the biggest guitar manufacturer in the world. But, it kind of speaks to, not to go on the rabbit hole of, how corporations function, but they really don't give a shit about individual effort. It's all about, I think everyone it's kind of redundant to even say that. So,
that brings up the argument, is it still Fender? Because the bloke who is called Fender, he's not
right
there for,
Well, there's that. And plus,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, oh, who's the latest guy running it? Oh, he's from Bed Bath and Beyond. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, and no disrespect. I mean, I understand it. You know, they're trying to maximize profits for their shareholders, which is the purpose of a corporation. But that's not the purpose of us wanting to make music and play cool gear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So anyway, so after that period of time, I still was, I mean, being involved with Wildwood. I mean, I still to this day do videos on Fender guitars, and they sell them hand over fist. And so in a way, I'm still doing brisk business for the Big F, albeit through Wildwood. So at one point I got involved with the Fishman folks, and that was kind of completely out of the blue. You know, I got a call from Richie Fliegler, who ironically or coincidentally was the head of marketing for Fender for years, and, you know, parted ways with them during one of the cabal takeovers of whatever. And he was doing some independent marketing stuff for Larry Fishman, who had got this new technology for sussing out these electric guitar pickups. And so Richie contacted me, and one thing led to another. So I started doing stuff with Fishman, developing these Fluence guitar pickups. And so we had one of the parts of our deal, which was another funny thing, is that I went out to Fishman almost kind of not kicking and screaming, but I had the Wildwood thing going. I still had the Hellender thing going. I still was doing X amount of stuff for Fender. I was playing with my band. I had more than enough stuff going on. I mean, I wasn't, I wasn't making, millionaire money, but I was, sometimes enough is enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was only so many days in the month. And so I went out there and I was blown away by what we were doing with voicing these pickups and stuff. I said, well, shit, this could really be something cool. So I remember at one point, Larry Fishman's like, hey, would you mind if I brought in my sales staff to just have them see you play these things and talk about them for a minute? I'm like, yeah, whatever. So he brings the sales force in, and I got this Strat, and I was like, man, this is really cool. You can do this. And so I'm just plugged in through a Deluxe, and I was playing all these different styles. And I was like, you could change the pickup sound with this button right here. And I started playing this, that, and the next thing. And so I get done with that, and Richie comes up to me kind of on the side, and he's like, hey, they want to hire you. I'm like, what do you mean hire me? I said, well, they want you to do, make you a deal to kind of, champion these pickups, maybe do some trade shows, maybe some workshops, videos, whatever. I'm like, oh, interesting. So I got together in this room with their finance guy, and I basically laid out almost the exact same deal that I asked Fender about. And they agreed. It was done within 10 minutes. Everything was done.
Wow.
And so that was another eye-opening experience. And they've been fantastic to work for. But, the big lesson to me on that as well is that, Larry Fishman's name is still on that, he's still in charge. And when you're dealing with the guy whose name is still on the building, it's a whole different dynamic. Mm-hmm. And
there's a few companies left like that, isn't there?
Yeah.
PRS comes to mind, and a few others.
There's still, and that's been great. And that's like 10 years running now. So that's been really, really good. So anyways, when I had these Tele pickups out, and I was talking to the guys at Wildwood, were like, well, we should do like a Wildwood 10 version of a guitar and put my pickups in it. And I said, or maybe I could even get Fender to do it from their end instead of just having Wildwood order it. And they were interested in none of it.
Really?
They're like, well, we have our own pickups. I'm like, I know what pickups you have.
Yeah.
And
that's so strange, because doesn't their Acoustasonic?
It's all Fishman.
Yeah.
It's all Fishman. Yeah.
And all their acoustics that are all Fishman, aren't they?
Then as well as now. It's like, it's not like you don't deal with Fishman. They wanted
the king of acoustic pickups, aren't they?
Right. They wanted nothing to do with it. So I was like, all right, okay. Like, to me, it was no surprise, just because, I just knew that it was kind of a,
Yeah, that's where
it was what it was. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But I'd always been buddies with, just pals with the guys from Reverend. I mean, Ken would come out to Wildwood at least once or twice a year, and we would do videos on all the different Reverend gear. And we just got along. Everyone thinks that Ken and I are brothers because we're about the same height. We're both from the Midwest. We're both about the same age. He always points out, he goes, you're so much older. I'm like 3 years older than you are, dude. Anyway, so it was always kind of in the back of my mind of maybe doing stuff with it, because they were just cool guys, right? So Joe Naylor designs all the stuff, and Ken and his wife, they're just good people. and we always got along good. So we'd always just be hanging out at the NAMM shows. You know, they at Nashville, they were always right next door to the Fishman booth. So we were all kind of hanging out. And then I said to Ken one time, like, dude, how come you guys always have these fun parties? I want to play at one of your parties. No one I deal with has good parties at NAMM, and I never get to play. He's like, well, you'd have to play a guitar with, you know, a Reverend guitar. I'm like, well, what do you think about setting me up with one of those Pete Anderson guitars, and we'll just put my pickups in it? You cool with that? He's like, yeah, absolutely. Have Fishman send me your pickups and we'll work it out. And so then I had a hankering for one of those Pete Anderson hollow bodies, the PA1, you know?
Yeah.
And so Fishman sent them classic humbuckers to put in that. And then they sent them a set of my Telly pickups to put in one of those Pete Anderson T-style guitars. So I got that. And I got actually the Dallas Guitar Show. Ken brought those guitars over. And I remember I still had my custom shop 55 Telly, which I still have, which is a great guitar. It's a Wildwood 10 55 Telly in Fiesta Red. It's a relic with my Fishman pickups in it. It sounds great. I used it on a bunch of recordings and touring and whatnot. It's the one I'm playing on the cover of that Brave New Blues guitar book.
Oh, yeah. Is it really?
And so when I got the Reverend guitar, I started playing that. I was like, yeah, there's a difference in sound here, but there's not a $3,000 difference.
Yeah.
You know? And so right around that same time, Ken was like, hey, you know, if Steve's cool with it from Wildwood, which he was, because really the only caveat that he has of me doing videos for anybody else is that I can't do serial number videos. That's the whole thing we did with Wildwood. I play a specific guitar that's for sale, right? So Ken wanted me to go to Toledo and do what we started to do, this thing called the Ken and Greg Show, where we basically just shoot the shit and play their latest guitars and whatnot. So while I was there, actually at Dallas, he had mentioned it. He's like, look, Joe Naylor and I would love to work with you and do a guitar. He goes, no pressure because we're pals. But if you ever were thinking about doing it, you know, let us know and we'll suss it out. So a couple months later, I'm in Toledo. We do a day of video shoots. And it was the first time I had really played all of their guitars in an environment where I just, you know, I could kind of mess around with them a little bit. And I thought, holy shit, I could get 5 of these guitars that would be fun to play, that ergonomically all do something that's really, really cool and still not spend as much money as one custom shop guitar from either of our favorite companies. They
are super affordable guitars.
Exactly. So I started scratching my head a little bit. So the next day at breakfast, I said to Ken and Penny, he's like, look, thought about this idea, this guitar. What do you think about? I've always wanted to, well, I said, we could make it simple. We could literally just do a different neck profile, put my pickups in it, pick out some cool colors, and change it from the Pete Anderson to my, you know, have my version of that. He's like, well, we could do whatever we want. I was like, well, the idea I always had back in the Fender days, I'm like, fellas, you need to make a guitar that's just slightly larger, because I'm sick and tired of people saying I look like I'm playing a ukulele because I'm 6'7". So we worked it out where it's like between 2 and 3% larger than a regular Telly.
It's good for big lads. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So when I'm playing it, people are like, you know, it just looks more proportionate.
Yeah.
And then we decided to do this raised middle section because I had this kind of weird Firebird bodied Telly neck thing. And Joe saw, he's like, we should raise the middle like that guitar. I'm like, cool.
It's got a real like 50s kind of, it's a beautiful guitar, but
I love it.
It's kind of like a parallel universe Leo Fender, isn't it?
Exactly.
Really?
Exactly. And so we decided to go for it, and people have been loving them. I mean, you know, it worked out great. So it was a great vehicle, of course, to get the pickups out there as well. Although the pickups were pretty well received from the get-go. But, you know, traditionalists, you know, a battery in a guitar, which was the same for me when Richie said, oh, there's a battery in there. I'm like, fuck all that, you know. But but when they told me, like, well, you plug it in for an hour and a half and you get 300 hours of plugged in playing time. I was like, well, shit, I plug in my phone twice a day. I think I can plug in my guitar once every 300 hours, you know? Yeah. So that wasn't even a thing. So
do you think we'd ever get to see a relict version of that?
You know, they don't really do any relic stuff.
I know, but maybe you could find a company, you know, these companies that do it. I'd love to see a relic version of that.
That would be kind of fun. That would be fun. So this guitar came out, I think, about 4 years ago. And as I said, the only thing that we've done different with it is like Wildwood has done orange versions. they did a black version with a bigger neck profile. That's the same neck that's on this old custom shop Strat of mine. It's like a big October of '56 kind of soft V, but huge neck type of thing. And then, as I said, there's that 3-tone sunburst and the butterscotch version. But I had this idea of doing P90s because prior, I've been messing around with P90 guitars going back about 10 years or so. A local guy, my buddy Rick Land, made me a guitar, which was a slightly larger bodied kind of double cutaway Telecaster with a big V-neck and 3 P90s. And so I like the idea of P90s, but I hated the noise. It's like, there's regular single coil noise and then there's P90 noise. P90s sound great when they're overdriven, but holy shit, they get noisy. So I mentioned to the folks at Fishman, I was like, look, we should do a P90. And then I said to Ken, I go, we can debut them on a new Gibson scale set neck version of the Gristle Master. And with an ebony fingerboard, and everyone was cool with it. So we actually had the guitar designed and prototyped before the pickups were even worked on. So when we did finally get out to Fishman to work on the pickups, which was right before the shutdown, I was literally like the week prior to the full country just going in lockdown from COVID. My last trip before COVID was at Fishman to do the final tweaking of the pickups. But we did a gold version, kind of this Tosa turquoise, as I like to call it, and then the black version. So again, with the pickups, we worked on 2 voices. And with voicing the pickups, what was really cool about it is we always have shuttle guitars. So we're able to pop out the actual analog, well, these are analog too, technically, but I mean, the traditionally wound pickups, able to take those out and put the Fluence versions in and then tweak them in real time using this computer program. So each time that we've worked on pickups, by the time we were done with the voicing, I preferred the sound of what we ended up with to what we were initially kind of inspired by. So, and that happened with these as well. So I wanted to have 2 voices, kind of a traditional P90, which I always kind of refer to the neck as kind of a velvety glass. And the bridge pickup has always got this kind of quack to it. You know what I mean? It's got this sinuous quack. And they're like, don't use that word quack. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to say quack. And so that's what it does. And it turned out great. And we did the ebony board. I did the Bigsby as well. I kind of was inspired by doing the Bigsby. I was scared of Bigsby's early on. I had a Japanese Tele custom with a Bigsby on it, and man, you looked at that thing and it went out of tune. So I was very.
And they're a nightmare to change the strings on as well, aren't they?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, now I'm pretty good at it. You know what I mean? I don't swear, at least. So I've worked out a little way to do it. That would be a good video, actually. Is
just you changing the strings?
Yeah, just say, hey, this is how I do it.
Yeah,
this is how I do it without swearing. But I always liked the sound of Bigsby's. But because Reeves Gabrels had done so much work with Reverend, there's a kind of spring that he uses that he actually took from his bike to pop on his Bigsby to a lot. It's much more buttery to operate, and you could do like warbles and all that kind of fun stuff. And they stayed in tune. So I got a what do they call it? Space Hawk, a Reverend Space Hawk, Reeves Gabrels model. And it does this really cool out of phase thing, as well as have that really usable Bigsby on it. So I was like, I want a Bigsby on this guitar. So a lot of people are like, when are you going to do it without the Bigsby? I'm like, take the Bigsby and like it. So, and they are set neck, and it's an ebony fingerboard, and all of Reverend's guitars are, the body woods are Carina. So this one's no exception. So,
and again, it's super affordable, aren't they? Like 1,200 quid in the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
I mean,
crazy.
And then other people be like, oh my God, they're so expensive for a Korean made guitar. But what's funny is that they're made in Korea at the same plant where Duesenberg is made, and Duesenberg always, I mean, bless them. I mean, more power to them, but always is able to pass themselves off as like this boutique brand. You know what I mean? It's like they're made in the same plant.
Yeah.
But you get so much guitar, don't you? There's so much. You've got the push-pull system.
Right.
And the boost. And
well, that's what I said. That's what I would say to the Fender guy. Just like this is like the other, the Gristlemanster. I mean, it does things that you can't get on a Fender guitar. And if you could, it would be like $5,000. You know what I mean? It would be a lot of money. So
it's the kind of upgrades you do to a guitar later on, isn't it?
Right.
You don't get a guitar with that much installed.
Exactly. So I've been very pleased. They've been great to me. People love the guitars. And so that's been a good relationship. So I'm sure we'll do more. But right now we're just letting them catch up.
I really like that Jetstream one, with the 3P90.
Yeah, that's cool.
That is a cool one, yeah.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit.
I want that, but with your headstock.
There you go.
It's really nice, yeah.
Well, I've got a bunch of their guitars that I use on the regular. There's a Pete Anderson baritone that's awesome. And it's the right length, and it's got apparently there's a thing with a lot of baritones or Baja Sextos, whatever you want to call them, where the has to line up over that bridge pickup in just the right way to get the maximum snarl, and that one has it.
Yeah.
And but it's got 3 pickups on it, like a Strat's got a Telly pickup, and it's got a whammy bar on it, like a traditional Strat type tremolo with a Telly body with the long ass neck. And man, that thing sounds great.
Yeah.
Did you encounter, when you released this guitar, did you encounter any sort of mass hysteria like when John Mayer released his Silver Sky?
No. I mean, every now and again, I have to say it's been minimal. I mean, every now and again, I'd be like, why, like, you're a traitor to Fender. And that's what that would send me off. Just like, excuse me, let's talk about lack of loyalty, if we will.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, if a company that made a sofa and there's another company that makes a sofa and they go, well, that looks the same as this sofa. It's like, of course it does. It does the same job. You sit on it. That is it.
There's that.
Yeah.
There's that. So, but I have to say it's been pretty minimal. And people understand. I mean, and if they give just the slightest look under the hood, they realize that it does things that aren't currently available with Fender. And let's review. I gave them every opportunity to do.
I mean, we are Fender boys through and through.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sentence could have gone worse, actually.
It could have,
but yeah. But I mean, I'm a Strat guy and he's a Telly guy, kind of thing. So,
well, and I still have a bunch of buddies that work there, and they still make some great stuff. As a matter of fact, I had a hankering. One of the live streams I do during the week, I do 2 for Fishman, and I was doing acoustic stuff, and just the nature with the drums in this room, it was really hard to get for me to be able to hear myself in a way that I could turn it up enough where it just wasn't a sonic nightmare. So I actually used one of those Acoustasonic Jazz Masters, and I really liked it. And and Fishman had sent me it, but they're like, you got to send that one back because that's like the golden sample, the one they compare everything from. I'm like, okay, I'll send that one back. And then I got a hold of an old Fender buddy of mine over there, and they sent me one toot sweet. So they're like, oh my God, that'd be so awesome. If, so there's and to be honest, they got a hold of me about, I don't know, a year and a half ago and said, hey, it's been so long, we should do some stuff together again. And, we miss you and yada, yada, yada. And I said, well, I appreciate that. And you guys are all great, but I've got my own amp and own guitars with these other companies. I think it might cause a little confusion in the market. I mean, it's still every now and again, people will be confused when I'm playing these Wildwood guitars. Like, well, why aren't you playing a Reverend? It's like, well, I do these things for Wildwood, have done for 10 years. Where I play other guitars, but
also you can play whatever you want. It doesn't matter, does it? Like,
right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about the podcast thing that Greg?
Oh, you've got your own. You've got a podcast as well. Funnily enough, joining us on our podcast, you have
I do. Yeah,
it's got quite a cool podcast. You've had some big names on: Andy McKee, John Five, Robin Ford. We had your mate Charlie Starr on.
Yeah, Charlie Starr.
He's a good fella.
Yeah, he's a great player as well.
Oh, no doubt, a great player and singer and songwriter.
And he's very into his guitars. Particularly, he's got an old Fender Tally that was given to him by a third party through. I can't remember the name, but it's got a carved out body. It was belonged to the guitar player from the band called the Four Horsemen.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever saw that particular tally, but it's a beautiful guitar. It's like old as shit, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and he's a great player as well.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Yeah. So that whole podcast thing started, during COVID, both Fishman and, my buddy from Fishman was always like, you should just do a podcast. It would be so easy to do.
Yeah.
And then Wildwood was looking for more stuff for me to do since I wasn't able to go out there and do as much stuff for them. What else could we do? I was like, well, we could do a podcast. I could start, reaching out to some folks and doing that. So initially we would post the video on Wildwood's website or on their YouTube page, but then Steve didn't want to do that anymore for whatever reason. I'm like, hey, no problem. So now we just put it up where, as I like to say, where pods are cast.
Yeah.
And and it's been successful. The numbers are respectable, and we really don't promote it other than just say, hey, every now and again I'll say, oh, that's right, the new one's out. And I mention it during my live streams, which always get kind of a consistent amount of people. So it's been going good.
That's funny. I mean, you're saying that the podcast thing's easy to do and stuff, and this is it was Phil's idea to do this podcast. Originally, I wanted to make TikToks with him, but he wouldn't. So this was the compromise.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is I finally have my own TikTok thing. My daughter does really funny TikToks.
Yeah.
And she's always like, you got to get on TikTok. You should do all your funny stuff on TikTok. So I was thinking, I was kind of dragging my feet for a while and thinking, well, maybe I'll just make that my platform for doing just some really goofy shit, just me. And then I just started dragging my feet. And then I was talking to somebody and I was like, well, what do you put on TikTok? He's like, I just repost the same shit I put on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I could do that too. And then the other day when Facebook's, numbers went
billions,
tank,
didn't they?
and I was like, maybe I should just hedge my bets and start posting shit on TikTok.
Yeah.
So I've just been posting little things every day now on there. And
honestly, I mean, it's a bit of a kid's thing, isn't it? But
right.
It's good fun, I think, once you get into it.
Right. Exactly. There's some funny things on there. I mean,
You're still not.
I'm still not convinced about TikTok yet.
I say it to everyone. I say, you got to be on it. Honestly, you'll miss the boat. And you'll be annoyed that you didn't start it earlier.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
and somebody on Facebook the other day, because I posted, I was like, hey, if you want to join my TikTok, it's at Greg Koch 66. And they're like, what is TikTok?
Yeah.
And I responded with, well, quite frankly, I believe it's a plot to end Western civilization as we know it. But it's also a social media platform.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's always something new as far as platforms go. So we'll see what comes after TikTok.
Yes, exactly.
You gotta be on that boat as well, whatever it's gonna be.
Maybe you should start your own one. The Gristle.
There you go. Gristle casting.
Yeah.
What would that ensue? Greg's Gristle cast.
Well, you know what? It's what's so funny about what we do for our live streams, because we just play and say whatever. You know what I mean? And which has been a lot of fun. And there's some goofy stuff that happens on everyone. A lot of times I'll just make up like a random tune. So in a way, what's kind of funny is that again, kind of speaking to the fact that I don't really do any kind of clickbaity things or, because it seems like I've mentioned this, I use this analogy or this statement before. There always needs to be like a whiff of controversy.
Yeah.
To bring people in, like the best of this, the worst of that.
Is this the worst guitar that you've ever played?
Exactly. Yeah. And God bless them. Good for all those people that do that. I just want nothing to do with any of that. But and a lot of those videos are very, very short. So I think to myself, if I would do YouTube things where I would kind of cherry pick all the little morsels from the longer shows, and just kind of ferret them out to like 5-10 minutes long. Those things would probably would get a lot more traction. But then again, there's a lot of me that says, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
So, Greg, do you think we'll be seeing you in the UK at any point soon?
Well, we were going to do, prior to Delta and then Omicron, we were looking at like doing something in April. But then I just haven't contacted anybody because it's been so weird. But now I'm personally getting the feeling that it's going to be over.
Yeah.
just in time for World War III.
Yeah.
Just in time.
I think Russia decided it was over.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Russia said,
we said we wouldn't get political.
Yeah, it would be great. It would be great to see you over here again.
Well, I certainly look forward to doing it. We had a good old time last time, and felt some traction. It was so nice to, because again, all those years of doing stuff. I mean, we're talking a lot of years, and never like just gigs in the UK. I've done clinics in the UK, and I would do full band clinics in the UK, but never gigs. And then finally, I was at Anderton's one time and doing some stuff like, you should really do some gigs over here. I was like, well, that's easier said than done. My agent in Germany, every time he gets a hold of somebody over here, like, oh yeah, let's definitely do it. We'll do X, Y, and Z. And then when it comes time to actually get it done, they're like, oh, sorry, next time.
Yeah.
And so like, well, we know a guy. So they hooked me up with Dudley, and he booked the thing, and it turned out great. And
is that Dudley Ross, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know that guy, yeah. He does all of Josh Smith's tours.
Exactly. And we were supposed to do a thing with Josh in November, and I bailed. Well, Josh has had COVID, and plus it was just him coming over to play with the rhythm section, and me and the two other guys, my son, and plus I was like, I was supposed to go to Poland, I was supposed to go to Germany, and then I was going to the UK. It's like, what if I get stuck in any one of those places because somebody's got it? You know what I mean? Yeah. And plus, you get a little suspect. Like, wait a minute, I could stay in my house and go downstairs and click the camera on 4 times a week and never leave my house and make the money, or I can get on a dodgy airplane, go across the world, and where we don't know what's going to happen, if anyone's going to show up or what. So I canceled the tour, and which made sense to pretty much you get a few people out there like, what the hell's your problem? Well, I don't know, a pandemic.
The same as everyone else's problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see how quick we can get over there that it's worthwhile.
I think a lot of it is starting to lift over here, and everything's opening up as far as entertainment and music and gigs. So give it again another 6 months, we could be in a completely different place again.
Yeah. That's true.
And then give us a text, because we'll help you out as much as you need it.
Yeah. Excellent.
Well, I say I'm sure he can bully his agent into something.
Excellent.
Well,
excellent.
It's been great talking to you.
Likewise.
Yeah, thanks very much, Greg.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for coming on.
An absolute pleasure, and we'll see you when I'm over there, which is hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, fellas, have a good one.
And you.